Good morning, boys and girls. I have a story for you today called Arande's Braids. It is written by Antonio Hernandez Madrigal and illustrated by a famous illustrator named Tommy dePaola. We've read a few books by Tommy dePaola. You might remember the story called The Art Lesson, or I'm not sure if I read you yet a story called Stregonona. That's probably his most famous ones. Anyway, Tommy dePaola is the illustrator of this book, but not the author. Arande's Braids. You're going to hear some Spanish words in this story, so I'll do my best to pronounce those. But the neat thing about this book is that in the front there's a glossary that tells you the Spanish words that you will hear, and then it tells you the meanings of them. So if there's a word we're not sure of, we could always go back to the glossary to see what that word means in Spanish. Arande, it's time to wake up, Mama whispered. Roosters were crowing as the orange and crimson colors of dawn spread across the village of Putucaro in the hills of Mexico. Arande got out of bed, washed her face, and put on her hupil. Hupil is a blouse in Spanish, and skirt. Then Mama brushed her hair and wove it into two thick braids that fell to her waist. When Mama finished, Arande helped her prepare the dough for the tortillas. As she mixed and patted, Arande heard voices from a loudspeaker in the street. Hair, hair, we will pay the best prices for your hair. Come to Miguel's barber shop tomorrow. What is that about, Mama? Arande asked. It is the hair buyers coming up from the city, Mama told her. Why do they want to buy our hair? Arande asked. They say it is the longest and most beautiful in Mexico, Mama explained. They use it to make fine wigs, eyelashes, and fancy embroidery. Mama looked in the old cracked mirror on the adobe wall. Her own hair fell just below her shoulders. Your hair is much longer and thicker than mine, Arande. The buyers would pay a fortune for your beautiful braids, she said with pride. They sat down to eat their meal of beans and tortillas. Do you remember what day tomorrow is, Arande? Sí, Mama, Arande said. Does anybody know what the word sí means in Spanish? It would mean yes. Yes, Mama. Sí, Mama, Arande said. My birthday. She would be 7, and Mama was going to take her to Senora Andrea's shop to pick out a present. Arande hoped she would get a new dress to wear to the village fiesta. They finished eating and got ready to go to the lake. Mama packed her fishing net and put it on her back. Don't forget the buckets, Arande, she said, starting off down the trail. When they arrived at the lake, women and men from the village were already fishing. Arande's mama unfolded their net. Look, Arande, more holes. I won't be able to repair it anymore. We need a new net so badly. Then she paused. Soon we will have the money to buy one. Arande was surprised. They had so little money. Before she could ask Mama where she would get the money, her friend Isabel ran up. Buenos dias, Arande. Can you come and play? Isabel called. Go, Mama said, but come back and help me sort the fish. Isabel and Arande ran across the fields of flowers. Are you going to the fiesta next Sunday? Isabel asked. The fiesta. Arande remembered her birthday and the new dress she hoped to wear in the procession. But maybe Mama needed the money for the new net instead. I'm not sure, she said. Throughout the day, Arande went back and forth, playing with Isabel and helping her Mama separate the small fish from the large fish. Then it was time to go. Arande was afraid to ask about her birthday, and Mama didn't say anything about it or the new net as they walked home. But the next morning, after making tortillas, Mama said, "It's time to go to Senora Andrea's shop, Arande." Arande smiled. She knew she would have a new dress for the fiesta after all. As they entered the shop in the square, Arande saw a beautiful doll wearing a finely embroidered yellow dress up on the shelf. Mama saw Arande stare at the doll. "Arande," Mama said, "what do you want for your birthday?" Arande wanted the doll, but she knew she couldn't have both the doll and the dress. She pointed to a yellow dress, the same color as the doll's. "Maybe next year we can buy you a doll," Mama said, as she paid for the dress. After they left the shop, Mama turned to Arande and said, "Now we will go to the barber shop." Arande caught her breath. "My hair? So that is how Mama is going to get the money for a new net? She's going to sell my braids?" Arande shivered at the thought of the barber cutting off her braids, but she didn't say anything to Mama. They reached Miguel's barber shop and went inside. Arande looked across the room crowded with women. She gripped Mama's hand and huddled in her skirt. She didn't look at the barber chair. She couldn't help hearing the sharp snip, snip of scissors. "Will my hair ever grow back?" she worried. The line of women moved slowly, and Arande's heart pounded as she and Mama reached the front. "Next person," the barber called out. Gazing at the enormous scissors in his hand, Arande felt her knees tremble. But before she could move, Mama walked to the chair and sat down. "I should have known Mama would never sell my hair," Arande thought as she watched the barber wrap a white apron around her Mama's shoulders and measure her hair. "Your hair is not long enough," she heard the barber say. Her Mama's face reddened with embarrassment. Without a word, she got out of the chair and took Arande's hand. As they turned to leave, the barber noticed Arande's braids. "Wait," he called out. "We will buy your daughter's hair." Mama whirled around. "My daughter's hair is not for sale," she said proudly. Then she felt the pull of Arande's hand and looked down. "See, Mama, we will sell my braids," Arande whispered. "No," Mama said. "You don't have to sell your hair." But Arande let go of her hand and walked toward the chair. The women stared as she climbed up onto the seat. The barber measured her braids and picked up the scissors. Arande closed her eyes. Her hands turned cold when she felt the metal scissors rub against her face and neck, and she heard the sharp snip, snip. The barber moved to the second braid, and Arande's eyes filled with tears. But she dared not cry. Instead, she asked the barber, "Senor, will my hair grow back?" "Of course, it will grow just as long and pretty as before," he told her. Arande kept her eyes shut until the barber had finished. Then she opened them slowly and looked in the mirror. Her hair reached just below the bottom of her ears. Out in the street, the air was cold on the back of her neck. How strange it felt without her hair. Mama walked beside her, not saying a word. Only the hollow clapping of their huaraches broke the silence of the cobblestone street. And if you look up huaraches in the glossary at the front of the book, let's see. It means her sandals or her shoes. Oops, and now I lost my page. There we go. Only the hollow clapping of their huaraches broke the silence of the cobblestone streets. Why didn't Mama speak? Was she angry with her for cutting her hair? Or maybe the hair cutter had not paid enough for her braids. Finally, Arande peeked at her Mama's face and saw she was crying. Forgive me, Arande. I shouldn't have let you sell your hair, Mama sobbed, wiping her face with an old handkerchief. Now Arande understood that her Mama was not angry with her. She had only been thinking of Arande's hair. Don't worry, Mama. My braids will grow back as long and pretty as before. Your hair was the longest and most beautiful of all, her Mama said. Arande paused for a moment, then asked shyly, Mama, did they pay enough to buy a new net? Si, mi hija. They paid us more than I expected. We can buy a new net and the doll you wanted. She gave Arande a big smile, and Arande had never felt happier. Then Mama took Arande's hand in hers, and as the last rays of sun lit up the rooftops, they turned and went back to the square to buy Arande's doll. The end. So I hope you liked the story of Arande's braids, and I will be sending this to you with an assignment to go along with it. But one thing I think that's really important for you to think about in the story is the setting. Think about where the story happened, when the story happened, and why we heard things like Spanish words there, why they were eating certain foods that they were eating, why was Mama's job to go and fish every day, what kind of a life do you think Arande and her mom had? So there's a lot to think about that's based around the setting of this story, and I'll send you an assignment to go with it. I hope you liked the story.